All right, guys. Hey there. This is Cody Straits with Access eForms, and let me kind of get my screen set up here. That was my timer. Hopefully, you guys appreciated that, and let me share my other screens. I know I've got a few other people, as I see people are still logging on to this session, and really appreciate you guys coming today. So I want to go ahead and get this thing going. There we go. Hopefully you guys can all see my screen. And yeah, like I said, I really appreciate you guys all being here today. This is a webinar. We're going to basically talk about kind of the evolution of patient electronic signature. Now, again, this is a webinar, so the format of this is that I am going to be doing the talking. I'm going to walk you through some of the things that we've seen as far as trends are concerned, desires are concerned, both from the hospital side, on the patient side, what our customers are experiencing, the feedback we're getting, and then I'm going to do a little bit of some show and tell as far as some of the actual electronic documentation processes are concerned. Now, like I said, this is a webinar. The formats that I'm going to be going through all of this. And if you guys have questions, I really love questions. So in the GoToMeeting toolbar, you should see a tab that you can expand that says questions. So if you have questions as I'm going through this, type your question in there and I will address it at the end of the session. All right? So we've got quite a bit to cover in a relatively short period of time. Some of you may have to hop off during this session. So the good news is that this session is actually being recorded right now. So I'll make certain that all of you guys that are attending, which I'm looking at the attendee list here, I see a lot of very familiar names. Some of you guys are people that are current customers, have been with us for quite some time, and some of you guys we're currently working with today, and some of you guys seem new. I don't recognize some of your names. So again, I really appreciate everybody here, especially special thanks to our existing customers. So, all right, let's get into it then. So the evolution of patient electronic signature, and what we're going to the world we're living in today, guys, is MEDITECH. So everybody here that's on the line is a MEDITECH customer, all right, MEDITECH user. So I'm going to be using some MEDITECH terminology. So if you do want to ask questions, feel free to ask questions regarding MEDITECH, right, or in our interaction with MEDITECH and how it is that we can make this work in a MEDITECH environment. So don't feel like your questions have to be very generic or broad. They can be very specific in nature under the umbrella of MEDITECH. So my name's Cody Strait again. I'm the Director of Strategic Initiatives here at Access. I've been here around 15 years. Really have seen a lot of interesting trends in healthcare from an electronic forms management and electronic signature perspective, and again, that's what I want to share with you guys today. Now, being that we are, there we go, talking about things under the MEDITECH umbrella, just so you guys are familiar a bit with more of who we are and our association with MEDITECH, we are an official partner with MEDITECH. We've got probably 600, 700 or so MEDITECH hospitals using our technologies across the United States, across Canada, across Ireland and England, and abroad. All right, so we are certainly a multinational company. A couple of things though beyond just our standard, MEDITECH run-of-the-mill partnerships is that, guys, we have a very unique partnership with MEDITECH to the degree where MEDITECH is not just a partner, but they are a customer. Matter of fact, you guys should see a press release coming out pretty soon that MEDITECH will be, I think the term is retweeting or putting through all their social media channels, talking about how they've solved some very interesting business processes using our electronic technology. And there's a list of some of the forms that they've converted from a paper process to an electronic process. Beyond that, with regard to patient e-signature, which is obviously the focus of today's session, MEDITECH demos our patient e-signature solution. So if you guys, if some of you have seen MEDITECH 615 solutions or their new web ambulatory solutions, and they happen to be showing off some patient e-signature capabilities, that's us. That's our technology that they're broadcasting there. So we're really excited about that. And of course, if any of you guys have stopped by MEDITECH's booth in the past couple of years at HIMSS, and you would have seen a patient e-signature solution going on, well, that's us again. So MEDITECH highlights us at HIMSS. And just a couple other things here. MEDITECH uses us for all of their W-2s and 1099s and some of their other documentation, as well as we're partnered up with MEDITECH South Africa, and MEDITECH Australia is actually a full-fledged reseller of our solutions. So our MEDITECH chops are pretty strong. Again, we know that environment very well, from the magic to the client server to the lovely world of 6X and pretty much everywhere in between. So moving on, look, here's the problem that we are seeing these days, all right? And this is really focused on patient e-signature, is we talk to our clients and they tell us that they've got some paper here and some paper there in their organization. And so what we've started to reference these documents, these forms, these pieces of paper that are floating around as is paper gaps. So think of these as paper gaps. So they're anywhere you have paper that sit in between your systems. And so typically speaking, we see a paper gap anytime you deal with a document that has some component of patient engagement to it, namely that a patient needs to add some information to a form, or they need to electronically sign a document. That's where a lot of the paper really exists today. As a matter of fact, I would say that's where the vast majority of the paper exists today. And also government forms. Anytime you have a form that has to adhere to a specific government format, in other words, it has to look a certain way, oftentimes those are very difficult to put into your MEDITECH environment. And that's not just like a shortcoming on MEDITECH's behalf. That's every system out there that we work with. Anytime you deal with a government form, that's a paper form. And of course you have the oftentimes forgotten about back office, HR, materials, purchasing, loads of forms that are being stuffed into interoffice mail envelopes and being passed around for approvals. Tremendous amounts of paper over there. So if you look at this across the spectrum of the organization, what we generally see is various areas where users, such as yourselves, want to eliminate some of these paper gaps. Namely, again, most of these are things that involve patient signatures. Well, the approach that we see that's very, very interesting is you guys generally look at, and it's not just hospitals, it's vendors as well, look at these departments as very much like silos. And oftentimes you have like these one form in one area or a couple of forms in one area that are very problematic. But the thing is, again, there's a siloed view of these departments and consequently a siloed view of these solutions. So what we're terming this as, and it just, again, these are just some terms that we throw out there, is that Band-Aid approaches. So we see a lot of different vendors out there touting a solution that's really exclusive to either a specific form or a specific department or something of that nature. And so where does that leave you? Where does that leave you, the customer? Well, it leaves you with basically having all these one-off solutions to solve, to fill in these paper gaps, to eliminate this paper for various processes across different departments. And I got to be honest, as far as some of our historical solutions, we're more inclined to, and historically, to have some solutions that are very conducive for some areas that are not conducive for others. So we ourselves, as a vendor, have been prone to this to a certain degree. But the feedback from our customers is that what they want is they want one solution that can be able to take care of all paper gaps and be facilitated across all of these different areas. Now, as I mentioned, you might have one form that causes a big problem, let's say at bedside. Maybe it's like informed consent, or otherwise known as surgical or procedural consent. Maybe that's a spot of grief, right? Or obviously you have your registration process where you've got your general consent. But the thing is, though, at all of these different areas, there are loads of other forms, other paper documents lurking behind those other problems. So you swat one and there's going to be others that certainly crop up. So with us, what we're migrating towards, and what we're actually not, we're migrating, where we are today is leveraging our solution called Passport to be able to take care of all electronic form needs across every single facet of the organization: registration, bedside, patient portal. And of course, you talk about patient portal, you're talking about extending documentation electronically outside of the four walls of your hospital or your organization. And then, of course, the back office. So what we are doing is providing one solution that can allow for, again, to convert any of these documents to an electronic document, capture data, and capture patient signature. So let's talk about this from as far as kind of go through each one of these departments. So the registration department, here's the way that this works quite simply, is registration clerk will key all of the patient data into MEDITECH. They'll register the patient into MEDITECH just as they are doing today. What happens from here, though, is MEDITECH sends that data stream up to our server, and what we're going to do using business intelligence, and it's really simple if, then, or else type questions, we will automatically select the appropriate forms that are required for this specific patient. So we'll use variables such as, is this patient, are they a Medicare patient? Are they an English-speaking versus a Spanish-speaking versus a French-speaking patient? If the hospital is an American hospital, is the patient from out of country? Are they from Canada? Or conversely, if it's a Canadian hospital and the patient is from America, what forms are required at that point in time? So we're taking the onus of responsibility of determining what forms are required off of that registration clerk, and we're automatically selecting those forms, and then we're staging them at the server level. Now, then the question is, how do I engage the patient with these documents? So we have a long history of doing some very interesting things here at Access. We've been doing e-signature for over a decade now. And it's interesting because some of the electronic signature solutions that you would see out today, they're lovely, but those would not have been accepted in 2004. All right, so just to give you some context, the e-signature solution that we used to sell in that was most often used in registration, it was a clipboard that was attached to the registration clerk's workstation via USB, and we would print off the consents and ABNs and MSPs and whatever it is that required signature, and the registration clerk would actually put those pieces of paper on the clipboard, and the patient would sign ink on paper, and we would capture the signature simultaneously. And that was, ooh, wow, awesome technology back then. We've since used and deployed a lot of LCD devices. I know you see a tablet PC. I'm sorry, actually it's a touchscreen monitor, which I'll talk about in a second. But we've been using LCDs as a very cost-effective way to do this in registration for years. And the LCD devices are oftentimes leveraged at the bedside as well. One of our hospitals, Halifax Health System down in Daytona Beach, Florida, they have an emergency department that consists of 100, I'm trying to think of the exact number, but let's just say it's give or take two or three beds. It's around 110 beds in the ED, and they're using all sorts of workstations on wheels to collect signatures at bedside. But in any case, though, let's focus back on registration. These LCD devices are fantastic, and they're great. But what we're seeing is that both the client, you guys on the phone, and the customer, the patient, are wanting to see more of that form in its full form factor. All right. Now, the LCD devices are a great approach, again, very cost effective, and there's a whole world of LCD devices that you guys can choose from. We used to use the Topaz devices because that's kind of what you guys always think of whenever you go to the bank and you sign something. And those devices, simply put, in the healthcare environment just did not do all that well. So we switched over to using Wacom LCD devices, we had a much greater success rate with those. The customers really liked them, but most importantly, the patients really liked them, and I'll talk about the patient perspective in a second. But as we have evolved as well from an LCD perspective, one of the things that we determined was a requirement, and this is just, again, if you guys are going to be looking at e-signature, and if you want to go to the route of LCDs, this is what you really need to wrap your mind around. If you present a patient an LCD device that just has a line with an X next to it that says, sign here, good luck with that, all right? Patients do not want to sign a generic line with an X next to it. If you tell them, hey, you're signing your consent form, they're going to say, How? What do you mean? There is no connotation or connection with what I'm signing with this generic line with an X next to it. So a lot of the devices that we use, we see our customers using these Wacom devices. You can actually portray form-relevant content directly on the device itself. And so the patient can read this, it would say like I, in my case, Cody Straight, hereby agree to sign the combined patient consent, blah, 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 blah. And so I can see actually what I'm signing. There's some context on the screen, and then I can capture the signature from there. The evolution of this, though, again, what our customers and the patients are wanting to see more of is they want to be able to present this document to a patient in its entire form factor. And so I'm very pleased to announce that we can do this. And we can do this with virtually any touchscreen monitor. All right, so imagine a patient sitting opposite the registration clerk, and then imagine a touchscreen monitor. And when I say any touchscreen monitor, I mean go down to Best Buy, go look on newegg.com or Staples or whatever site that you want. Pick up any capacitive touchscreen monitor, and you can present these documents to the patient right on that monitor, and they can then complete them electronically. And when I say complete them electronically, I'm not just talking about signature capture, I'm also talking about data capture, checkbox here, checkbox there. I hereby consent for the use of blood products or this, that, or whatever. And then they can sign directly on these screens as well. Now they could sign with their finger, but I would recommend also actually using something like a JOT, J-O-T, if you're taking notes. Stylus that works for capacitive monitors, and those are really cool. Now, we also get the question of, what if I want to use an iPad in registration? So that's a really great comment. It's a really great thought. It's a really great question, and it's just, again, goes back in the same mantra of what we always have here at Access, and that our customers lead us as far as where we go at the as far as development. So what we can do as far as an iPad goes, and again, you don't have to use both a touchscreen monitor and an iPad, one or the other, right? Or an LCD device. But the problem is, how is it that I can connect an iPad with the registration clerk's workstation? So what we're able to do is put up a barcode on that registration clerk screen as a result of their registration process. The registration clerk grabs an iPad. They will then select our e-signature application on the iPad. They will then scan that barcode on the screen. That will then pull the forms down from the server that this patient is required to complete, and then the patient can electronically fill those out right there on the iPad. Once you've obtained the signatures, of course, what we want to do is, which we do this with all our clients, is we then electronically kick this over into MEDITECH's scanning and archiving solution. So that's registration, and I'm looking down at the clock, and I got to speed up here. So bedside. At the bedside, here's the problem. Oftentimes what we see is a solution that's used in registration is not compatible or easy to use or conducive for the bedside. And there's a whole array of reasons for that. Now at the bedside, you guys all on the phone here with me probably have different setups. Some of you probably have workstations on wheels, some of you have tablets. But what we're able to do here at the bedside is the same solution is able to, you guys can get access to the forms either through our Forms on Demand interface, or you can use MEDITECH to queue or stage forms in the same instance that I said just a moment ago, or look at that last little bullet right there. Our solutions, which are browser delivered by the way, can be launched directly from MEDITECH. All right, at least any client server environment and 6X environment can launch hyperlinks and external applications. So we've worked this out with MEDITECH. We can actually launch these forms directly from MEDITECH, all right, and pass over patient context onto these forms. So I could be there using like a workstations on wheels, and if I had an LCD attached to this, I can capture signatures from the patient right there at the bedside if I wanted to do that. Or if I was using an iPad and had more of a tablet strategy. Now when I'm mentioning iPads, it's not exclusive to iPad here, okay? But what I can do with the iPad, again, choose the e-signature application on the iPad from Access, scan the patient's barcode. What that does, again, is it looks out to the server and it shows me all of the forms here that are queued up. I can then launch those on the iPad, and allow the patient to electronically complete those, and then of course these would ultimately go into the patient's record in MEDITECH Scan Archive. Patient portal. And we're talking about e-signature here. Why are we talking about patient portal? Well, the reason we're talking about patient portal is because we're talking about, not only we're talking about e-signature, we're also talking about the ability for a patient to electronically complete a document. And by the way, again, reminder, if you guys have questions, type those questions in. I'll get to them here in a little bit, all right? So what the same solution that is being used in registration, the same solution that can be used at the bedside, can also be used through your patient portal. And so what I've got as an example up here is an MRI patient questionnaire. The questions are actually on the second page here, but in any case, you can see that the patient could actually gain access to their forms. They could complete the documentation in advance of their visit to the hospital. And so what a lot of our CIOs are telling us is that this is really awesome, because if you can make it more convenient for the patient to complete their documents electronically via the portal, what that will do is that will drive up the adoption of the portal, which I don't know the exact HIMSS stage that it's associated with. Maybe I think it might even be dispersed over a few of these things, but you have to have certain percentages of your patient population be enrolled in using your patient portal by certain dates. And again, I'm not an expert in that, but you guys probably know more about that than I do. But the bottom line is this is a means to drive people to leverage your patient portal. And then, of course, we've got the back office. And the only reason I'm showing back office here is because more often than not, we get the questions from our hospitals that say, hey, the same technology that I'm using to capture patient electronic signature, can I use that for approvals for our business office to use for, or a back office to use for HR forms, whether it be like a vacation request form or employee change form, or what can I use this for capital purchase requests and expense reimbursements, things like that. So long story short, again here, the answer is yes, the same solution can make those documents electronic, and this is what MEDITECH is using it for at their own personal, they're at their own company. You can make those documents electronic. Not only can you make them electronic, you can also use our workflow engine to pass these documents through the approval process. And the nice thing is that our solutions, being that they're browser delivered, they're completely device agnostic. And when I say browser delivered, I am speaking in a true HTML5 fashion. So I don't care if you're using, in this case, down the order from left to right, a Surface Pro, if you're using an iPad or a Samsung or any other type of Android type phone or an iPad or whatever, you guys will be able to collaborate and approve documents along an automated pathway. By the way, that same approval workflow we've seen used for informed consents, where you would have a patient electronically signing and completing their surgical consent form, but the physician still needs to sign off on it, and the surgical consent form is being handled by, let's say, like a nurse or a PA, and it still requires that signature for the physician, in which case we can then automatically route it to the physician for their approval and sign off, which they can do, again, on any device. So we've seen that used a number of times. And at the end of the step here, guys, what you see is that little database on the right. We are in the business of not just capturing signatures and porting the electronic document over into the patient's record and scan archive. We are in the business of capturing data, discrete data, and we can actually give you guys some use out of that data. So at the end of the process, we can write all this data into any sort of open database, SQL, Oracle, MEDITECH data repository. And I will also, I'm sure some of you guys are asking the question, can this data flow directly back into MEDITECH? And I'll say that there's some very interesting conversations and meetings going on right now between us and a couple of our clients and MEDITECH's development. So should be some very interesting things that happen over the coming weeks and months. All right, so let's take a look at this then. Let me get over to my Internet Explorer and show you guys a few things. All right, don't need that. It's all right. The system times out, of course, as you can imagine. Thank you very much. And it's going to make me log in again. Bear with me 1 second, guys. Sorry about that. So what I'm doing right now, I'm actually in the Windows 8 version of Internet Explorer. All right? So everything that you're seeing here is purely browser delivered. And I'm going to launch up a surgical consent form, procedural consent forms, informed consent forms. Again, it seems like there's a number of different names for these things out there. And so here we have it. Now, mind you, I'm on a 22-inch monitor right on my workstation. Excuse me. So that's, you know, if this was on an iPad or if this was being used on my Microsoft Surface Pro 2 and held at portrait mode, it would present more like a piece of paper. Now, you can see here that I've got a document that has a lot of the boilerplate verbiage and a lot of blank areas. And keep in mind, this can be launched directly from MEDITECH. Now, what we're able to do, and we've done this with a lot of our clients, and it's pretty darn cool, is, you know, if you think about this in your organization, how many procedures, how many different types of surgeries do you guys perform or are performed at your organization? And based upon our experience with our customer base, it's 200, 300, 500, etc., different types of procedures. And so more often than not, you guys have to manage a procedural consent form for every one of those procedures because you have specific risks and details associated with each procedure, all right? And I get that. But what we want to do is help you guys minimize the amount of forms that you guys actually have to manage. And so put the form relevant content, the procedure relevant content, I'm sorry, in a database. And so what you can do here is you can actually choose the procedure via a drop-down list. And to be clear, we're not dictating how any customer has to do anything. This is just how some of our customers look to address these issues and streamline and simplify things. Now, this list of procedures here, in this case, it's 3, very, very small, right? What can present is the list of procedures relative to the physician that is performing a procedure. So it's not going to show all procedures, just the ones relative to that particular physician. So I'm going to choose appendectomy. And once we choose appendectomy, all of the procedure relevant information associated with appendectomy flows directly onto this screen. Now I'm going to zoom in for those of you that might be on a big screen and maybe you can't see this too well, or tiny screen, can't see this too well. Notice I do have spaces for signatures down here. I've got space for signature for a patient, a witness, and a physician. Guys, it's totally up to you what you have signature spaces for. We're not going to dictate that. That's more of a policy situation. But in any case, you see right here, we have a not just again a signature space, but a spot for data. I do or do not consent for the use of blood products. And notice I can only check one of these. And guys, you know how sometimes you're filling out something online, like you're going to buy something off of a website, and you go to type in your credit card number, but you forget to type in the expiration date of your credit card. And what does it do? It pops up and it says, sorry, you can't complete this. You have to enter all of the data in the required fields. Same thing applies here. And this is what our customers want. What they've been asking us for is a way to essentially, from the front end, do as much error reduction as possible. And you know who's been asking us for this is the folks over in HIM, because they deal with all the junk and they have to then see to it that this stuff gets put right. And so they said if you can solve a lot of these issues and make things filled out properly the first go around, that'll make life a lot easier. So it's not just again about making things electronic, it's about ensuring that they can be filled out properly the first go around. Now I'm going to go ahead and click to sign off on this. So I could use my finger, I could use my stylus, all right, and there we go. Assign Cody, there's my signature, all date and time stamped, and from here, once I'm completed, if I wanted to say, complete this, it would then route to the patient's record within MEDITECH Scan Archive, or whatever other system that you guys might be using. I'm not going to go through a tremendous amount of form examples here because I want to be conscientious of the time of which I'm drawing near an end, but if the questions dictate that you guys want to see a couple of other examples of forms, I'm happy to do that. But here's one other form though that I do want to go over and that I do want to show. And the reason I want to show this is because this is a particular sticky form for a lot of hospitals, and that it involves three things. Number one, as you can see, a lot of data entry. Number two, signature, and this is a signature again from a patient and the physician. And number three, what's really interesting about this is that this is a government form. Okay, this is what's called a POLST form, or depending on your state, it might be called a MOLST form, M-O-L-S-T. Different states have different name for it, but the bottom line, it is a state-run, state-owned, do not resuscitate form that's geared for end-of-life care. All right? So it has to look this way. You guys have no design control over this. This particularly is the state of Hawaii, as you can see their logo right there. And in Section A, what you have is CPR. You know, do I want to do CPR or not? And I'm going to check off the box for attempt CPR. And of course, in the paper world, there's nothing from stopping me from going over here and checking that box, which again, what we see generally with this type of a form is an error rate of about 30%. Something is wrong on this. So as I check in Section A, attempt CPR, in Section B, we have medical interventions, and you can see I've got three options: comfort measures only, which is basically just keep me comfortable until I pass; limited additional interventions, do something; or full treatment, like I want to come back. Now I can check on full treatment, I can check on limited additional interventions, and if you were here with me, you would see me banging away on my mouse trying to check the box for comfort measures only, which I cannot do. And this goes back to the thing that I said earlier, is I want to eliminate human error. So I could go through and capture, complete the rest of the data. I could try to sign it. I could complete this and have it flow directly into the patient's record. If the physician still needs to sign it, it can flow to the physician for approval. But that's that, guys. Actually, I'm sorry. Just because I get excited, there is one other thing I do want to show, and that is that MRI questionnaire. Any sort of questionnaire is usually one of those things that we do see. This is the one that I had in my presentation in my PowerPoint. But questionnaires are oftentimes paper-based processes as well, especially if they involve the patient's signature. So in this case, you can see, please list any specific surgeries. I can type out, I tore my left labrum and still have titanium pins. Now we also, of course, have this. And I can draw on this, all right? So I can say I have some metal right there. Now I've got something right there, and I've got a pacemaker right there. Save. There you go. So again, the same underlying technology here that's being used to capture signatures for your basic consent form is being expanded to not only capture signatures, but annotate on documents. Again, what you're seeing right here is what I was advocating could be filled out on the patient portal. It can capture discrete data. You can go through all the yes or no's. You can get a signature from a patient, not only a signature from a patient, but also from a hospital staff member. And the same solution can be used for the back office as well. So, guys, there you have it. This is what our customers have been asking for. This is what the market has been going towards. This is what customers are expecting as technology is becoming more and more a part of their lives. All right. So with that being said, I am going to take a look at the questions here. And guys, if you've got to run, by all means, run. But I greatly appreciate your time here today. Okay. Question one: can you put a witness signature on the forms? That is a really good question, and the answer to can we is, of course, yes. But again, as I kind of alluded to just a moment ago, whether or not you have a witness signature is more of a policy thing for you guys. All right? So there is no law that dictates you have to have witness signatures or anything of that nature, and of course depending on the types of forms. But what the purpose of the witness's signature is there for is so that somebody can attest to the fact that, yes, I did witness this patient sign their document. Okay? So with us, yeah, you can still have a witness signature, but the good news is that we're also capturing a tremendous amount of information to that end of, again, proving the patient did sign their name, such as date and time stamps, and actually multiple of those, session ID, audit trail, all sorts of very, very interesting things that we're doing today. All right, let me look at the questions again. Can these electronically signed documents flow into MEDITECH Scan Archive? Yes, they can do that. Mind you, what you will need for MEDITECH, if you're using MEDITECH Scan Archive, is their ECM file importer interface. I know it's a mouthful, so I'll say it again. ECM file importer interface, commonly known as the cold feed interface. So that's MEDITECH's essentially bridge to get anything into their system electronically, and we flow through that as well. Okay, let me read another question here. Okay, after a patient signs, can a staff member cue a signature for a specific physician? Great question, great question. Well, there's two ways to look at this, and again, this goes back to more of a process type of a situation or scenario. So can this be routed from one person to the next for approval and for signature? Yes. In this case, regarding physician, you might have some processes that the physician is predetermined and it's already on their form, and so there's no requirement for what I'll term as ad hoc workflow. Nobody is having to make a decision about where this form would need to be routed, who would need to sign it, anything of that nature. Now, for the processes, for the scenarios where you don't have that inherent information on the form for whatever reason, and you would want to have a staff member, an assistant, route this to a physician for their approval in more of an ad hoc basis, yes, you can absolutely do that. And there's a number of ways to go about doing that. You can have a pool of physicians available in a drop-down list. You could actually do a search within our system to search like wherever it is you guys maintain your physician libraries and dictionaries, Active Directory, for example, and then pull the physician from that. So again, there's an array of ways to go about taking care of that. Okay, let me read this question. You mentioned that the consent forms can be seen in MEDITECH for the nurse. Where exactly is it seen? All right, so that question, if you want to clarify for me, I'm going to answer this in a couple different ways, but if you want to clarify your question for me, if I'm missing the mark here, please do so, all right? So there's how do I view the form and get access to the form within MEDITECH, and then like how do I view the completed document, right? So within MEDITECH, again, if I'm working this from the world of client server or 6X, there's a variety of ways at which I can queue up a form from MEDITECH. I can launch a hyperlink, and in MEDITECH, more often than not, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to have the forms that you use most often be affiliated or associated, and we have all the specs for this, by the way, within the certain menus of the different MEDITECH screens. For example, it's not going to make sense maybe to put an MRI questionnaire available for ready and easy use in more of a maternity type of a screen or something of that nature, guys, okay? So you're going to be very strategic about where you put those forms. So you can launch them from MEDITECH that way, or you can launch our Forms on Demand application that way, so you're just going to more of a menu of available forms that your user can then fill out. Now, once these documents are completed, how is it that they're viewed? Well, what we're doing in that situation as far as viewing the completed documents, we are passing these over into MEDITECH Scan Archive. That's the ultimate repository for these. So your users, if they wanted to view these documents, then that's where they would be, in Scan Archive. And you would just access that in the appropriate way that you guys are doing that today. Hopefully that answers your question. If not, clarify for me. Okay, another one. All right, very good question. So here's a question that basically says, I'm calling this suite Passport, and how can you clarify how that's different than IFS? So IFS is one of our traditional solutions, all right? Now, when I say traditional solutions, I mean it's one that we've been serving up and helping hospitals with and selling for 15, 16 years, something like that, long time. What the IFS solution traditionally does, for those of you that don't know, it has the ability, I'll go back to that registration process where it's most often used. What we do is you do a registration process within MEDITECH. The data goes up to, once it's complete, goes from MEDITECH to our system. We look at that data, and then we automatically choose what forms are required. And then from there, we can distribute those forms. Now, traditionally, the IFS solution prints these forms. It would print off a face sheet. It would print off a sheet of barcoded wristbands and labels. It would print off, if somebody didn't have e-signature, it would print off the consent form. It would print off the ABN form. It would print off all of these types of forms, again, on an automated basis, and all the patient data would be merged onto it, and these forms would have barcodes for MEDITECH Scan Archive. So how is this what I'm terming as Passport? How is it different than IFS? Well, it's namely different than IFS in that the intent of this solution here moving forward with Passport is that it takes components of the IFS solution, which we've married into this, and it allows for the IFS component is what effectively under the hood allows for us to automatically select forms as a result of a triggered event like a registration process or something. So IFS would tee up all of these forms and stage them at the server, but IFS markedly is intended to print documents, where what we're doing is we're taking a step away from printing forms and we're converting them into electronic documents so that they can then be available for use. So that's really the big key difference. IFS is intended to print and serve as the business logic. Passport is leveraging the business logic of IFS, but rather than printing, we are queuing up those forms electronically. Hopefully that answers your question. All right. Here is another question here. Can you use tablets at Bedside without the Passport portion of the software? Excellent. And I know who's asking that question, and I'll be coming to see you really soon, so I look forward to talking with you more about this. So we have, like I said, we've been doing e-signature for years and years and years. Long time, okay? And you got to start somewhere. So like I kind of talked earlier about how we used to use these clipboards and we put a piece of paper on them and capture signature that way. And then of course we are, where we are today, where we use a lot of LCD pads. Now our traditional line of e-signature solutions are awesome for registration area, but they can also be used at the bedside. Now I mentioned earlier that these can be used on the bedside. Our traditional e-signature solutions can be used at the bedside with LCD pads. But for the customers that want more of a tablet strategy, what you have there is the traditional e-signature solutions can be used on tablets that have what I'll call active display technology or Wacom digitizer technology. Effectively, there's two types of monitors that you think of a touchscreen monitor, like an iPad versus a Surface Pro 2 versus some sort of like a Fujitsu computer or something along those lines. I historically thought of those as all the same thing. They are not. They are not created equal. There is active monitors and there are capacitive monitors. Capacitive monitors are what you'll get with iPads and your general run-of-the-mill touchscreen monitors. All right? Those types of devices are not conducive for our traditional line of e-signature products. Okay? Our traditional line of e-signature products require active monitors, which are, again, those ones that have Wacom digitizers. So for those, you're looking at more of the like Microsoft Surface Pro 2s, you're looking at the Fujitsus, you're looking at an array of other types of tablets out there. And so that's one of the things, and again, like I said, I know who you are asking the question, that's what I've been excited to talk with you guys about this, because the market has been pushing us and customers have been asking about tablet solutions and they want more of a device agnostic approach. So with our Passport route, with the web-based route, that affords us the ability to have a complete agnostic approach to the different types of tablets and devices. So what we're doing right now, guys, we're in the midst of making a transition. There's no sense in hiding it. This is what we're doing. If somebody wanted an e-signature solution, we have our traditional line of products that we can certainly offer that. But because of the market demand, we are in the process of kind of shifting things over and allowing somebody to use more of the Passport solution that can be that, again, that one-stop shop to do all of these different sorts of things. So again, Hope that answered the question, and I expect that we'll talk quite a bit more about that here very soon. Okay, on to the next question. Let me read this here. Aha, okay. Once queuing a form signature for a physician, will it flow to the physician's PCM sign queue? That is an excellent question, and we are working on that right now with MEDITECH, and we expect to have that delivered by fourth quarter. So is it available today? No, it's not available today as far as having it show up directly within the physician's work queue, but we are sorting that out right now. We have a plan, and that will be a very exciting announcement when that comes to its full fruition. In the meantime, how would that physician get notification? So I'm going to go ahead and kind of have a follow-up question to that question right there, because that, to be clear, is not available right now. So how would the physician be able to view this? Well, there's two ways. One is we can automatically send an email to this physician that says you have a new form you have to review and approve, and the physician could click on the link within that email, be authenticated, and then electronically approve that document. That's one pathway. Another pathway is, you see me kind of moving my cursor around, is what we call My Forms. My Forms serves as, you can see I've got inbox and in process and completed. The inbox in My Forms is the collective location where a user could see what forms they have to review at any point in time. So while the email serves as a great notification, My Forms is a one-stop shop for any forms that I do have to approve. So this could be forms on a clinical nature. This could be forms of a business nature if I needed to approve something in HR materials or whatever it is that I just would otherwise need to approve. All right. Another question here. This is hopefully, Alex, that was you asking that question. Hopefully I answered that. Please feel free to ask a follow-up. Okay, here's another one. How large are these images once they cross to Scan Archive? Scan Archive is a large storage and backup issue for our facility. Not unlike any other facility out there. Hey, storage is certainly something. By the way, just to show you how far we've come, I was reading Tom Clancy's Patriot games the other day, and he was boasting about, the main character was boasting about how he was writing on a kind of an electronic typewriter, if you will, and he was boasting about how it had, get this, 128 megabytes of memory. That's what they were boasting about back then. So it's funny. Anyways, so but regardless, memory, yes, certainly a big thing. So the question is, how much space are these forms as they go into MEDITECH Scan Archive? Well, you can adjust that, and all it really boils down to is fidelity. It boils down to clarity. We're not going to dictate the appropriate file size, because what we're going to do is we're going to pass this over into Scan Archive, again, via the cold feed interface, as a TIFF image. That's what MEDITECH really likes, is TIFF images. So we're going to convert this form to a TIFF image. And as we're going through that conversion process, part of the administrative setup of this is basically the fidelity. What is it you want? How high of a resolution do you want this thing? And so it's really for you to decide. It's not like it's going to be a whopping 100 megabytes or something like that. It can be whatever you want. Typically speaking, what we're going to see is 1 megabyte is what a lot of the customers want, because that provides an appropriate amount of fidelity for that. But again, that's really for you guys to decide. All right. Let me see here. I'm seeing that the questions are kind of falling off. If anybody has any other questions, I will gladly stay to address those, or talk about anything else, show anything else as well if need be, talk about patient portal stuff if you guys would want. But in any case, I do greatly appreciate your time. I really appreciate the questions, and hopefully this has been informative to talk about what we've seen as far as the trends are concerned, and some things for you guys to certainly consider as you look at solutions to not only just capture patient e-signature, but on a more broad level, close any paper gaps that you guys have out there. I'm going to go back over to my PowerPoint, and put my information up there one more time. That's me. There's my information. You can see my email is right there. If you guys have any questions, if you want to give me a call, if you want to talk to me, I am available to you. Feel free to reach out. You can see I've got multiple international numbers there too. So if you live in South Africa and you want to talk to me, there's no excuse that you can't reach me, okay? So I appreciate it, guys. Thank you so very, very much. It's been my pleasure. And again, for those of you that are customers, thank you guys for being our customers. And if we can help in any way too, let us know. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.